Welcome to NWEA Basics for Teachers, the class report. I'll be sharing my screen with you, so let me switch screens. So this is what we've seen before. Here's the class report summary page, the overall performance, and then our general performance, overall performance, and goal area performance. We're moving now down to the next page, which is the individual student growth page. You'll notice that it shows all the different students. It tells me the grade that they're testing in and the test date they took. The RIT score is there, the percentile score is there. For reading, there's even an estimated Lexile score, and the test duration is also shown. Surprisingly, each of these students took the same amount of time for each test. That's not particularly common. Let's look at how we can analyze this, though, and this may be a slightly longer tutorial than we have had. Go back to the page that we looked at before and look at this median RIT. The median RIT for Mr. Reband's class was 234. So make a mental note of that. Or if you've got a piece of paper, write down the number 234. Now add 3 points to 234 and subtract 3 points from 234. Your answer should be a range then from 231 to 237. So I'm going to go and look at the scores for the students, and I'm looking at the bold score because that's actually the scores that they took. And I'm going to, if I could, I would draw a box around everyone that was between in the range of 231 to 237. That's your normal average student based on that norm mean. So these students scored within the standard error of being the average 50 percentile or average student throughout the nation. Those are the ones that we normally teach to. Now look at this percentile band and look at any and draw a box around anyone who is below 20 percentile. Mr. Reband doesn't have anyone who is below that, but if he did, those would be students who are at risk, who will need some sort of remediation, for whom core instruction may not be effective. Look also at students that are above the 80 percentile, and notice that many of Mr. Reband's students are in that 80 to 90 percentile, and especially look at the ones that are above 90 percentile. So that's this group right here. These are students who, at least for this test, scored in a gifted and talented range and will need some, not remediation this time, but enrichment for them to continue to grow at a pace that is appropriate for them. So we have three groups of students. We had the ones that we marked that were our average students, that are the ones that we usually teach to. If we had had any, we had the at-risk students who need some remediation, some extra help. And we also had students who were above the 90th percentile who were scoring high enough that they need some enrichment. They need extra materials in order to continue growth. I can begin to think about how I'm going to group my students or how I'm going to plan my lessons this way. If I move over to this goal performance area, this is the area where it talks about what each student did for each goal area. And I can look at it and I can see that some are in the low average range, some are in the average range. So I can begin to look at these and consider how I'm going to work with these or what my groups would look like. Mr. Reband has a fairly unusual, at least in my experience, class, in that many of his students are in the high range or in the high average, but we still do have some who scored lower in some. Notice this one in particular, I think it's Madison, but I'm trying to get Mr. No, it's Miss Edison. Miss Edison scored low average in literature, but she scored high average in informational text. So now that we look at this, we can see that that informational text is her strength And he may want to focus on that, and he may want to highlight that and help so that she can continue to grow there, while also supporting her so that she can continue growth and move up in the literature type reading. Notice that some of the other students have the same sort of thing. And find this kind of information out from the individual data that I've seen. If all of these students had not been at a 60-minute test duration, then I could have been having conversations also with some that maybe did not take as long, or maybe they took longer and were spending more time trying to figure out an answer that they weren't sure of. So these are options that we need to look at too as we're talking to students about their performance. Notice that NWEA also gives an estimated Lexile, so that if you've got students at a very low Lexile, you may need some modified text in order to reach those students. Stop in again for our next session, which will begin to talk about the class breakdown report and how that can be used to set up groups.